Welcome to the show where truth takes the mic, where the world spins fast, but we hold it tight. This is the Howie Silbiger Show on True Talk Radio, where the real ones go. Oh, politics, passion, the news of the day, no filter, no fluff, just the Silbiger way. So buckle up tight, let the debates flow. This is your hour, the Howie Silbiger Show. Silbiger Show. Silbiger Show. Politics, passion, the news of the day, no filter, no fluff, just the Silbiger way. So buckle up tight, let the debates flow. This is your hour, the Howie Silbiger Show.
And good evening. My name is Howie Silbiger. We are live, so you could call in. Number to call, 1-877-669-1292. That's the number to call to get in on the conversation here on the Howie Silbiger Show, right here on the True Talk Radio Network. Such a pleasure to be here. So happy that you taking your time out of your evening to join me. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. So on Saturday night, there was an assassination attempt on the President of the United States. Now, I remember a time where assassination attempts were taken very seriously, and that it changed the way the world looked at security, and it changed the way the world looked at presidents. Unfortunately, we don't live in that time anymore. Unfortunately, we live in a time where cynicism takes over. So almost immediately after the president was evacuated from the room, after gunshots rang out in the hallway, posts went up almost immediately of leftists, mostly leftists, saying that the whole thing was a staged event. That somehow, for some reason, Donald Trump, the president of the United States, decided that he was going to get a hitman to come into the hotel where him and his entire cabinet were sitting and fire off live rounds. It makes no sense, really. It's kind of a ridiculous thing. Just so he could build the concept behind it was so that he could build a banquet hall at the White House. So he was going to put everyone's life in danger, create an extremely dangerous situation with live rounds flying, hiring a guy, a leftist, a radical leftist, to come and kill him, all to prove that he needs to build a banquet hall. Now, when you say it out loud, it sounds a lot more ridiculous than when you read it, although reading it's kind of ridiculous too. And you have to wonder, what kind of people actually believe this stuff? What kind of people actually sit there and go, well, you know, he has a point. He does want to build a banquet hall, and so why wouldn't he hire someone to go and kill him? Really? Doesn't make any sense. There's no logic behind it at all. Yet it kept getting repeated and repeated and repeated. And you know the old adage, you repeat something enough times, people are going to start believing it. And you repeat it on the internet and you put it onto an Instagram reel or a YouTube reel, and boy, it gets play. And boy, do people love listening to that stuff. And so I started to repeat it over and over and over again. And I saw some people that I thought were relatively intelligent, at least that was my assumption, that these people were relatively intelligent, repost it and repeat this crazy idea that a sitting president of the United States would hire somebody to go and try to kill them. It's just such an insane, theory. And so I wanted to start with that because it brings me into the idea of how lunatic society's become, how absolutely crazy society's become. Now let me get this straight off. Let me explain this straight off. Right off the top of the show. Let me explain that. I don't care. Personally, couldn't care less. If you are a Donald Trump supporter, I couldn't care less. If you hate the guy, you hate his policies. I don't care if you hate him as a person. I don't care if you hate his morals, whatever they are. I just don't care. I don't care what you think of Donald Trump. The truth is that Donald Trump was elected president of the United States in a Democratic election, and he is the president. So that's the truth of the matter. And as president, he deserves every right and every respect and all the dignity, the dignity that we usually give presidents. I know that hasn't been the case for a long time, but at one time, presidents were important people. The president of the United States was something to aspire to. But after Trump's presidency and then Biden's presidency and now Trump's presidency again, the office has been tarnished a little bit. And because it's been tarnished, the prestige of being president has dropped tremendously. But that doesn't mean you could go out and say whatever you want and do whatever you want when it comes to the president of the United States. Jimmy Kimmel, talk show host, late night talk show host, got on his show last night, and he had a AI generated version of Donald Trump's wife and his son Barron sitting on his stage. So they were AI generated, and this was a skit that he had put on that he had pre-recorded. And he looked at Donald Trump's wife, Melania, and said to her, "How does it feel to be a future widow?" Now, I don't care how much you could hate the guy. I don't care how much you want to parody the guy. You could parody him from today till doomsday for all I care. But to broadcast on national television the day before I'm sure Jimmy Kimmel didn't know that there was going to be an assassination attempt the next day. But in any case, to broadcast something like that, asking a first lady how it would feel to be a future widow, it just seems wrong. To me, it's just wrong. And so when I look at the way people talk about Donald Trump, look at the way people treat Donald Trump, look at the way the media covers him, look at the way people talk about him online, I just can't understand it. You want to attack the president for his policies? Go ahead. But attacking him as a person, attacking his family, wishing him dead? There were so many posts that I saw saying, "Oh, he missed again. Too bad. I was really hoping he'd hit him this time." Really? You're hoping for the death of a person? You're hoping that somebody gets killed? Somebody who never hurt you or your family? Somebody you don't even know? Hoping for the death of a stranger? What kind of sick person are you? Who does that? It's gotten too far. It's gone way too far. I think that everybody who posts online saying that they wish that the president would die, I really wish and hope that the Secret Service investigates each and every one of them. I hope that they arrest him. If they live in the States, arrest them. If they live anywhere else, get Interpol after them. Because every time you post up a threat, every time you post up that you hope that the president dies, every time you post up something like that, you are adding and contributing to the atmosphere that is eventually that has led already to 4 assassination attempts on the current sitting president of the United States, and will lead eventually to a murder of a president, to an assassination. And if you're going to contribute to that, then you should pay the price for it. I'm Howie Silbiger. Feel free to call in 1-877-669-1292. That's the number to call, 1-877-669-1292. And like I said, I don't care if you support him, you don't support him. Wishing him death and advocating for his death is really wrong. It's not something you should be doing. Any president, I don't care which president you're talking about, anybody, should be advocating for the death of people. That's wrong and sick and demented. You need help. If you're doing that, you need help. You need serious mental help. 1-877-669-1292. Now, another thing that came up this week was also on Sunday night, 60 Minutes aired. And I don't know if you saw the 60 Minutes, the interview with Donald Trump. But the woman who was interviewing him asked him what it felt like to be a pedophile. And his response, he shut her down pretty quick. And this whole idea of Donald Trump being a pedophile comes from a rapist and a pedophile, she asked him. But this whole idea of Trump being a pedophile comes from the fact that he was on the list, on the Epstein list, apparently. But there were a lot of people on the Epstein list who weren't pedophiles and who had dealings with Epstein but didn't have anything to do with what was going on Epstein Island. In fact, the Donald Trump, the current president of the United States, is the one who informed the FBI in a 20-page memorandum that Epstein should be looked into. He's the one who turned Epstein in. So if he's the one who turned Epstein in, then why would he be implicated in any of Epstein's crimes? That doesn't even make sense. I'm pretty sure after you call the FBI on somebody, they're not going to be your friend for very long. I'm fairly sure that's the way it works. But yet somehow the left-wing movement, has decided that Donald Trump is a pedophile, and once again, let's broadcast out false news. Let's broadcast out something that is completely insane and untrue, and repeat it enough times so people believe it. And that's exactly what happened. So I'm glad that Trump, you can look up what he answered the reporter, but I'm glad Trump stood up for himself and told the reporter she was a sick person. Because anybody who's advocating that without any proof, without any kind of backup, anyone who's calling someone or accusing someone of such a horrific crime deserves to be called out, deserves to be ridiculed. 1-877-669-1292 is the number to call. 1-877-669-1292. Let's move on, because we saw this happen other places too. For instance, a few weeks ago, I don't know if you remember this, but a few weeks ago, there was a rumor going around that Bibi Netanyahu was dead. And somebody released an AI-generated pictures of Netanyahu under some rubble, and said that Netanyahu had died in an Iranian missile attack. Now, of course, it so happened that couple of weeks, Netanyahu missed a couple of meetings and disappeared from public. And so the rumor kept going. It swelled to a point where mainstream media was running articles saying, is Netanyahu alive or dead? But he was alive. He was very alive. And we just found out this past week that Netanyahu had disappeared during that time period because he was undergoing treatment for cancer. And it wasn't really good for the leader of a country in the middle of a war to announce that he had cancer. That wouldn't have been good for the morale of his country, nor would have been good for his country at war. And it would have shown a weakness to his enemies. So he kept it private, which people should do sometimes. Keep private health matters private. That sounds reasonable. Anyway, so people were talking about Netanyahu being dead, which was shocking to me, since there was no proof that Netanyahu was dead. There was no indication from the Israeli government or from any other government that Netanyahu was dead. And the funniest part of that whole thing was that Netanyahu actually met with the U.S. ambassador, Mike Huckabee, and they took pictures of them walking down outside of the Knesset. They took pictures of them walking outside, and people were accusing the Israeli government of creating those pictures in AI. Even after Mike Huckabee, the ambassador to the United States in Israel, got up and said, no, I was there. I took the pictures. Netanyahu was very much alive for me. People were still accusing him of creating those pictures through AI. And the idea that you can't believe what you see anymore, the concept that even if I see it with my own eyes, it may not be true, is really the problem that there is, the problem with AI, with artificial intelligence. For instance, artificial intelligence could create anything. I could actually clone myself to do a show without actually being here. I could just be a clone. For instance, how do you even know you're watching me live? Well, I can tell you that you are, and I can tell you could prove it by just calling 1-877-669-1292, and I will answer the phone and talk to you on the air, so you know that I'm a real person. But AI technology has gotten so good that you could actually clone people, and they look fairly realistic. So if you're watching this in the background, or you're listening in the background, and somebody clones a voice, and that voice, you're hearing that voice, and the voice sounds natural and sounds human, and it's just a script that someone had written and fed to the voice, it's crazy. The technology today is absolutely insane. And you could actually do it. And nobody would know the difference. And that is the scary part about the whole thing. Deep fakes are really scary because they could take you and make you do anything you want. I'm the kind of guy who had thousands and thousands of hours of video and audio online. You could find it. I'm just thousands and thousands of hours of video and audio that anyone could just grab and do whatever they want with. And that kind of scares me a little bit. I don't know if it scares you. I don't know if the stuff scares you. I guess as you get older, you start to wonder, why do we need this technology? How does this technology help mankind? What are we doing? Why are we doing this? And how does this help anybody? Now, don't get me wrong. I love the technology. I use the technology on a daily basis. I use AI every single day. I do all sorts of stuff on AI, from creating music to creating text to all sorts of other stuff. I do a ton of stuff on AI, and the idea that AI is one day going to replace many people it's very true. I know people who have computer science degrees who can no longer find jobs because AI has taken over their jobs. Nobody wants to hire a person to sit for 100 hours to look through code when AI could find a problem in a couple of seconds. It doesn't make sense. You feed the code into an AI processor and they'll find the problem in seconds compared to hours and maybe hundreds of hours. So people are losing their jobs. And will AI ever replace someone like me who does a show? I don't think so. Because AI can't think. It doesn't have a brain. It's not able to do rational thought. I could look at a situation, do some rational thought, and understand where the situation stands. AI not necessarily. They can't necessarily do that. So I'm not really overly worried about AI taking over the world. I am worried about the stupid people believing that AI is real. Stupid people believing what they hear and what they see, even when it's obviously fake. And it's just sad, really. It's just sad that we've gone to the point where we've dumbed down education to a point where people will believe anything they hear. I've said this for years on the show, and I continue to say it. Don't believe a word I say on the show. Please do not believe me. Don't take my word for anything. Look it up. Research it. Find out if what I'm telling you is true. Don't believe me. Because believing me, I don't want people to believe me blindly. I don't want people to say, oh, Howie said it, therefore it must be true. Look it up. And most of the show is my opinion anyway, so take that for what it's worth. It's just an opinion. And your opinion too. You can call in if you want. That's why I always have open lines. 1-877-669-1292 is the number to call. If you're listening on Monday night, if you're here on Monday night, that's the number to call. 1-877-669-1292. And I'll be more than happy to talk to you if you want to talk about this. But once again, I'm live. I'm a real person. A lot of people who are doing podcasts today aren't. It's scary and sad. It's a whole lot of other things in between. And that brings me to the final topic I want to talk about tonight. The idea that there is a chance, even a little chance, of anything going back to normal, of anything going back to the way we remember it, of anything reverting back to a time where the world reverting back to a time where you could believe what you saw, where things don't just appear out of nowhere, where normal people run the world, where people who run for politics are good people and qualified people. That world has disappeared. That world is gone forever. And I know I'm starting to sound like an old man lamenting the past and saying the good old days. I don't believe the good old days were also good. But I to quote Billy Joel, I don't believe tomorrow is what it seems either. I think as the world progresses, people will get dumber and dumber. And we're going to end up in a world where we're already in a world right now with pretty dumb people. But the dumber they get, the more hatred will spread. The more hatred spreads, the more danger minority groups become. They become dangerous to the people who want to be homogeneously stupid. Because most religions and minorities are raised to be thinkers. And you can't be a thinker in a dumb world. And so when you think about the the hatred that we see in the world today, why does it exist? It's mostly out of jealousy. Now, that's really what I believe. I believe that hatred comes from jealousy. Now, I've forwarded this theory on the show before. The theory that the Jews received the Torah, the covenant with God, and then the Christians came along and said they had a new covenant with God, the New Testament with God, and the Jews didn't buy into it. Jews said, no, it's okay. You can have your covenant with God, but we have the original. And as long as people still worshiped the original, so as long as people still accepted the original, the new one could never really take off. So that prompted the Crusades and the forced conversions and the massacres of the Jewish population over centuries. Then along came the Muslims and said, hey, we have a new deal with God too. And our new deal with God usurps both the Christians and the Jewish deal with God. And once they came along and said, this is what this is, my religion beats your religion, we are the supreme religion, then the jihads made sense. When they went around and started killing Christians and Jews, they weren't discriminatory. They said anyone who's not a Muslim either has to convert or die. And so, why convert or die? Why not just let people worship what they want to worship? Why not just leave people alone? Live and let live. The reason is, quite simply, that you can't say, I have a new covenant with God, when somebody else is following the old covenant with God. Everybody either has to accept your covenant or it's not legitimate. It doesn't work. And the fact that Christianity and Islam accept the Jewish covenant as the original covenant with God gives the Jews a little bit of an edge. And that's why the Jews are hated everywhere. They're successful. Why are they successful? Why are they so into money and banks and everything else? Because they weren't allowed to do anything else. They were barred from all other professions. So they're successful. So that's another thing to be jealous about. So the Jew hatred we see today, the Jew hatred we see everywhere is jealousy. The Jew hatred we see in Israel, the actual conflict, is nothing to do with jealousy, nothing to do with hating of Jews. It has to do with a religious war. It has to do with a religious edict in Islam that says that you can't have anything that's not a Muslim country on Muslim land. And as long as they believe that Israel is Muslim land, then Israel will always be a thorn in their side. Politics is fairly easy if you break it down and you think about it. If you break it down to its root cause, politics is simple to understand. Unfortunately, the news and political leaders muddy it up and muddle it on purpose to confuse the population, because that's called population control. They allow themselves to control you, and you allow them to do that too. Just think about this for a second. You have a cell phone in your pocket, or a cell phone on your table, or a cell phone somewhere near you. That cell phone has a GPS chip in it. That GPS chip tracks you wherever you go. I don't know if you've ever gotten an email from Google saying, here's your map of where you visited the last month. If you take a look on the map, it'll show you everywhere you've gone and how long you were at each place. They're tracking you. Now, for most people, that doesn't really matter. I couldn't care less if Google knows that I leave my house at a certain time and I go to work and then I come back from work back to my house. I really couldn't care less. I don't do anything that I want to hide. But the idea that they could track you every movement, everywhere you go, and how long you be in places and who you're meeting with, that they could do that without a warrant, without anything, where in the past they always needed a warrant, is quite shocking. Now the cell phone companies and Apple and all the companies that make Android phones all say the same thing, that we don't release this information. Even with a warrant, we don't release the information. And I guess that's kind of true. We saw that with Jesse Galganov when they tried to get his location information and Apple refused to release it. So I guess that's kind of true. But just the concept, just knowing that somebody, somewhere, has access to where you've been at all times and doesn't have a warrant and could very well sell that information, kind of makes me queasy a little bit. Just a little bit. I'm Howie Silbiger. It's the Howie Silbiger Show on the True Talk Radio Network. Thank you for joining me. I will be on again maybe tomorrow. We'll see. Right here on TrueTalkRadio.com. Thank you so much for joining me. And the next show that I'll be doing, maybe tomorrow, I think probably tomorrow, will be Political Hitman on Israel News Talk Radio. So tune in for that. That's coming up, I think, tomorrow. But keep watching the Howie Silbiger Show page on Facebook for more information. Until the next show, thank you so much and have a great day and a great night.